Welcome to the Weather Insights Tropical Briefing. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. We're recording on Sunday, August 24th, 2025. National Hurricane Center monitoring two systems. We have Ferdinand in the middle of the Atlantic, kind of followed a similar path to Aaron, stayed a little bit east of Aaron, certainly did not get the strength that Aaron had. Currently moving north-northeast at 15 miles per hour, just barely a tropical storm, 40-mile-per-hour winds, minimal tropical storm, and moving out to sea. So no threat with that particular system. The next one we're going to watch is Invest 99. This is currently east of the Leeward Islands, tracking west. It's expected to move through that area. It has a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days. It's moving into an unfavorable environment in the Caribbean, and if it makes it through that, could move into a more favorable environment. Jeff, I know you're going to touch on that a little bit more. Taking a look at the infrared satellite for that system. It's looking a little bit, like not too much. Pretty small system. Has a little bit more convection down there as we than we've seen the last few days, but looking like a pretty small storm. So there's a lot of work for 99L to do before it becomes a system. But the odds have increased from 20% to 40% today, Jeff.
Yeah, and you can just kind of looking at the whole basin here. So here's Fernand up here to the east of Bermuda. It wouldn't totally surprise me if this strengthened a little bit as it got further to the north here.
Yeah.
Very active trough, kind of weak boundary here off the southeast U.S. coast, and then back into the northern Gulf. I mean, it is a really active day here in the northern Gulf of Mexico. A lot of thunderstorms out here. But what's interesting, you can kind of see this trough here. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit.
Hmm.
This trough here in the United States, East Coast back into the Central Plains. This is going to bring some really unseasonably cool air down this week, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Unfortunately, it's probably going to just bypass us a little bit here in Southeast Texas. But areas over here to the east, and with some cloud cover and some rain, we're talking highs only in the 60s and 70s in the Southeast United States here for the last week of August, which is almost unheard of this time of
Wow.
year. So we'll take a look at 99L. So here it is. The aircraft is out there right now. It just did its first pass kind of right through this area. It hasn't found any westerly winds. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. So the background wind flow here is the easterly trade winds all from the east. And so what you're looking for down in here to determine if there's any closed circulation or not at the surface is a westerly wind. And so far in the first pass, they have nothing but northeasterly winds. I'll switch over to the recon real quick. You can see here, here's the plane. All these wind barbs are coming from the northeast. And so nothing from the south, at least here on this first pass. Again, they haven't been out here long. They haven't looked around a whole lot. Interestingly enough, Barbados here is northeasterly also. So if there were a circulation, it would have to be somewhat down in this area down here, and they'll continue to look at that as they fly around. And you can see that some of the low clouds here maybe have a little bit of a southward component, but it's really hard to tell sometimes on satellite. There might be a little westerly here, but if it is closed, it's very, very weak. It's moving very quickly to the west at 20 to 25, which is really fast for any sort of tropical system. This kind of spin you see here is probably the mid-level spin up here. So if that is the case, if there's nothing at the surface and this is mid-level, this is a really disorganized system, and it's kind of struggled with keeping the thunderstorms going. You see the thunderstorms are clustered here; they're not any big one area. And so it's struggling against some unfavorable conditions. And like you mentioned, as you get into this part of the Caribbean, the central and eastern Caribbean right here, what happens is the trade winds accelerate in this area. So the easterly trades pick up, and causes what we call divergence at the surface. So the air is spreading apart at the surface, and that tends to make conditions generally unfavorable for development here in the eastern and central Caribbean any time of the year. But as you get further to the west, around Jamaica and west of that, you have the trade winds slow down. And so they begin to weaken and slow down. And that's the opposite of what happened in the Eastern Caribbean. And you have low level convergence, or you have wind piling up, you have air piling up. And so that creates a more favorable area over here for showers and thunderstorms. And a lot of times you'll notice these kind of weak little waves, they don't look like much. And then they get over here into the Western Caribbean, like this one, and all of a sudden you have all these showers and thunderstorms developing, and that's that kind of trade wind convergence you get. So if this does survive through here, and that's a big if at this point, it could find some more favorable conditions over here in the Western Caribbean. The big question as it gets in that part of the world is going to be how much does it interact with land? If it goes down here into South America, Central America, we're not going to see any development. Obviously, the Yucatan here is a potential landmass to contend with. So we'll just see. This is the European ensembles, and this goes out through next Saturday, the 30th, and you can see the European here. It has some ensembles that, interestingly enough, develop it in the short term, and then it kind of falls apart and weakens in the Central Caribbean, and then goes into Central America as a weak system. Notice here the blue dots, which would be the Google AI model, has no development of the system at all, and so that is one thing to kind of, we don't have a lot of support for this system. I think, there's some hesitation. This is like X number of storms in the past. It's coming through the Caribbean late August. You've got to kind of keep an eye on it. But conditions are not incredibly favorable down here, and they really haven't been all year for anything to develop. And so, just looking at the ensembles here, this is the GFS. You can see it has some members here kind of strung out, but there's not a lot of them, not overly strong. The Canadian, the same way. This is for Saturday morning next week, maybe one or two that gets it down here into the Bay of Campeche. And then lastly, I wanted to kind of talk about this cold air coming down. This is quite unusual for late August. So we're going to have a big trough here sitting in the eastern United States by middle of this week. So this is temperatures for, I believe it's Wednesday. I get these sliders to work. Yeah, this is Wednesday morning. And so we have temperatures anywhere here from 5 to 10, 15 degrees below normal across the Mississippi Valley, even down into the deep south, the Gulf Coast. And here you can see that kind of frontal boundary gets down in here Tuesday and Wednesday, but it kind of stalls out right over us or just to our north. So I doubt if we get much cooling. Any cooling we're going to see here locally is more the function of cloud cover and showers and thunderstorms. The other part that's important with this is this deep trough here for this time of year, sitting here, depending on what shape 99L is when it gets in the Western Caribbean. If it's a weaker system, it probably continues on to the west and goes into the Yucatan, Central America, that area. But if it does begin to develop, it's going to feel the pull of this trough. This is a really deep trough for this time of year, and so it's going to want to start to turn to the northwest and potentially even the north as we get into late this week, if it begins to develop some in the Western Caribbean. And so there's a lot of pieces here to deal with this system as it comes from the Caribbean. The course of action right now is probably not a whole lot of development. There's just so many factors against this that it just doesn't look likely that we're going to see a lot of development, and there's just not a lot of model support for this. And it would be it would this Friday is actually the 20th year anniversary of the landfall of Hurricane Katrina
Yeah.
in southeast Louisiana and Mississippi, and I think it's important that we definitely remember that probably one of the worst hurricane events in American history, 20 years ago this Friday.
Yeah. Yep, and we are getting close to the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th. So that's just around the corner. The good news for a lot of people, though, next weekend is Labor Day weekend. So I'm sure a lot of folks will be enjoying some of that cooler air, but other folks maybe will have some rain to contend with. So keep it right here on Weather Insights on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to get the latest on the tropics. Also, check out our Weather Insights website. Check out Jeff's blog on there. And we have daily forecasts now on all of the social media outlets. Until next time, Jeff, thank you very much. Have a good one.